The restaurant was
sea bass
quiet,
is a wonderful
but not
choice.
peaceful.
That sounds lovely.
Soft
We'll
music
have that,
played in
thank
the
you.
background.
Excellent choice.
Crystal
This is nice.
glasses shined under golden lights. Rich people sat at tables, talking in low voices. This was a place where everything looked perfect. Then the door opened. An old woman walked in slowly. She was wearing a simple gray coat. Her hair was white. Her steps were careful, like she was afraid to fall. She looked around, confused. She did not hear the music. She did not hear the voices. Because she was deaf. People noticed her right away. Some looked away. Some whispered. Some smiled in a fake way. A few shook their heads like she did not belong here. At the corner of the room, a young black waitress noticed her. Her name was Lena. Lena was holding a tray. She had been working for hours. Her feet hurt. Her hands were tired. Her face showed stress, but her eyes were kind. She saw the old woman standing alone. No one helped her. The host did not move. The manager looked busy. Other waiters avoided eye contact. Lena felt something heavy in her chest. She slowly walked toward the old woman. "Good evening, ma'am," Lena said softly. The woman did not respond. Lena noticed it quickly. The woman was deaf. Some waiters behind Lena laughed quietly. "She won't even hear you," one of them whispered. The manager looked at Lena and shook his head, warning her not to waste time. But Lena did not move away. She smiled gently. Then she did something unexpected. She raised her hands and started using sign language. The old woman's eyes suddenly widened. Her face changed. She smiled for the first time. The restaurant did not notice it yet, but something special had just happened. Lena helped the old woman sit down. She pulled the chair slowly. She placed a napkin gently on the table. She signed every word with care. The old woman watched her hands closely. Her eyes became wet. She signed back. Very slowly. Very carefully. Lena froze. Her smile disappeared for a second. Her hands stopped in the air. Because the sign the old woman just used was not common. It was personal. Very personal. Lena swallowed hard. She looked at the old woman's face again. Her heart started beating fast. Impossible, Lena thought. The old woman touched Lena's hand. She pressed it softly. The restaurant was still busy, loud, careless. But at that table, time stopped. The old woman leaned forward and signed again. Lena's eyes filled with tears. She stepped back quickly. One of the waiters noticed Lena's face. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" he asked. Lena did not answer. The manager walked over, annoyed. "Why are you wasting time?" he said angrily. "This is a high-class restaurant." Lena looked at him. Then she looked back at the old woman. The old woman sat quietly, waiting, trusting. Lena took a deep breath. "I will serve her," Lena said. The manager laughed. "She can't even hear," he said. "Be fast and leave." Lena nodded. But inside her heart, fear and confusion were fighting. As Lena served the food, the old woman kept watching her. Every move, every sign. Then the old woman reached into her bag. She took out something small, very old. She placed it on the table. Lena saw it. Her hands started shaking. Her breath stopped. Her past flashed in front of her eyes. A memory she tried to forget. A secret no one knew, except one person. And that person was sitting in front of her. At that moment, the restaurant door opened again. A tall man entered. He wore an expensive suit. His shoes shined. His presence changed the room. Everyone recognized him. He was a millionaire. People stood up. The manager rushed forward. Staff fixed their posture. The man did not look around. He walked straight toward the old woman's table. Lena stood frozen. The man stopped. He looked at the old woman. Then he looked at Lena. His eyes fell on the old object lying on the table. His face changed. The room went silent. And in that silence, one question filled the air. Who was this deaf grandmother? And why did she know Lena's secret? What happens next will shock everyone. Lena stood near the table, but her mind was far away. The old object was still lying in front of her. Small, worn, silent. Yet it was louder than any sound in the restaurant. Her hands felt cold. She looked at the deaf grandmother again. The woman's face was calm, but her eyes were sharp, like she was looking straight into Lena's soul. Lena lowered her head. She remembered everything. Years ago, Lena was not a waitress in a rich restaurant. She was just a little black girl in a poor neighborhood. The house she lived in was small. The walls were thin. Winter nights were cold. Some days, there was not enough food. But there was love. Her grandmother raised her. Her grandmother was deaf too. She could not hear Lena cry. She could not hear Lena laugh. But she always understood her. She understood through eyes, through touch, through signs. Her grandmother taught her sign language before she taught her how to read. Hands can speak, her grandmother used to sign. And hearts can listen. Lena learned fast. She learned how to be patient. She learned how to look people in the eyes. She learned how to feel emotions without words. But life was not kind. One night changed everything. Lena remembered that night clearly. Rain was falling hard. Sirens were loud. Her grandmother held her hands tightly, signing fast, with fear in her eyes. Then there was chaos. After that night, Lena lost her. No would-be, no explanation, just silence. Lena spent years asking questions, years looking for answers, years feeling empty. And now, here she was, standing in front of a deaf grandmother who used the same rare sign. The same one her grandmother used only with her. Lena's chest felt tight. Back in the restaurant, the manager cleared his throat loudly. "Why are you standing like that?" he said. "Customers are watching." Lena forced herself to move. She placed the food gently on the table. She signed slowly, carefully, like her grandmother taught her. The old woman smiled again. That smile felt familiar. Too familiar. Lena wanted to ask questions. 1,000 questions. But fear stopped her. What if she was wrong? What if this meant nothing? The old woman signed something again. This time it was clear. She signed Lena's childhood nickname. Lena's knees almost gave up. No one else knew that name. No one. Lena stepped back quickly. Her eyes were wet, but she blinked the tears away. She did not want attention. She did not want people staring. But people were already watching. Some customers looked annoyed. Some looked curious. Some looked uncomfortable. The manager leaned close to Lena and whispered angrily, "Finish fast. This is not a charity place." Lena nodded. But inside her heart, something changed. She was no longer just serving food. She was standing at the door of her past. As Lena turned away, she felt a strong presence behind her. The millionaire. He was standing close now. Very close. He was tall, calm, and serious. His eyes were sharp, but not cruel. He looked at the old woman first. Then he looked at Lena. He noticed her shaking hands. He noticed her pale face. He noticed the old object on the table. His voice was low and controlled. "Did something happen?" he asked. Lena opened her mouth, but no words came out. The old woman touched the man's arm and signed something to him. His face changed. Not anger, not shock, something deeper. Recognition. He looked at Lena again, this time longer, like he was trying to remember something. The restaurant felt smaller, quieter. The air felt heavy. Lena finally spoke. I know that sign," she said softly. "My grandmother used it." The man's eyes widened slightly. The old woman reached out again and held Lena's hand. Tight, like she was afraid to lose her again. At that moment, Lena understood one thing clearly. This meeting was not an accident. It was a return. A truth hidden for years was about to come out. And when it did, nothing would stay the same. The old woman did not let go of Lena's hand. Her grip was gentle but firm, like she was holding on to something precious, something she had waited for a long time. The restaurant noise slowly returned. Forks touched plates. People started talking again. But at that table, the world felt different. The millionaire pulled a chair and sat beside his grandmother. He looked calm, but his eyes were full of questions. The old woman lifted her hands again. She began to sign. Slow, clear, careful. Lena watched every movement. Her heart beat faster with each sign. This was not normal sign language. This was family sign language, a style only used inside a home. Signs created with love, memory, and shared pain. Lena's lips started to shake. She signed back. The signs moved faster now. A silent conversation began. People at nearby tables stared. They did not understand what was happening. To them, it looked strange, confusing. But to Lena, it felt like coming home. The old woman asked a question. Lena froze. It was the question her grandmother used to ask her every night before sleep. No one else in the world asked it that way. Tears rolled down Lena's cheeks. She nodded. Yes, she signed. It's me. The old woman closed her eyes. Her shoulders shook. She pressed her hands to her chest. The millionaire leaned forward. "What is she saying?" he asked quietly. Lena took a deep breath. The millionaire looked at Lena deeply. "Then we finish it," he said. Outside, thunder rolled softly. Inside, three lives stood at the edge of a truth buried for years. And once it came out, there would be no turning back. The millionaire stood still, blocking the table. His back was straight. His face was calm. But inside him, a storm was rising. Around them, the restaurant felt small. Too small for what was about to happen. Security guards moved closer, but the millionaire raised one hand. They stopped. "Give us a moment," he said firmly. No one argued. He turned to Lena. "Sit," he said gently. Lena hesitated. She had never been spoken to like this by someone so powerful. Not with respect. She slowly sat down. The old woman kept holding Lena's hand. Her fingers were warm, real, alive. The millionaire took a deep breath. "My name is Daniel," he said. "She is my grandmother." Lena nodded. "I know," she replied softly. Daniel looked surprised. "Ow!" Lena looked at the old woman. "She signs like my grandmother," Lena said. "Not like a teacher, not like a book, like family." Daniel swallowed hard. "That sign language," he said slowly. "She made it when I was a child." Lena's eyes widened. "So did mine," she whispered. Silence fell again. Daniel leaned forward. "Tell me everything," he said. "Please." Lena closed her eyes. She did not want to speak, but she knew she had to. "I was 7, she began. "My grandmother took care of me. She was deaf. She was strong. She was kind." The old woman nodded while listening. "One night," Lena continued, "men came to our house. They were angry. They were looking for her." Daniel's jaw tightened. "What men?" he asked. "I don't know," Lena said, "but they wanted something she had." The old woman's face darkened. She signed something slowly. Daniel translated, his voice shaking. "She says it was about money and truth." Lena nodded. "They said I was in danger," Lena continued. "My grandmother hid me. She told me to run." Tears rolled down Lena's face. "I never saw her again," she said. Daniel leaned back, shocked. "My grandmother disappeared that same night," he whispered. The pieces started to connect. Daniel looked at his grandmother. "You left to protect her," he said quietly. The old woman nodded. She signed again. Daniel translated slowly. "She says she watched from far away. She made sure Lena was safe." Lena covered her mouth. "All these years," she whispered. The manager suddenly walked closer. "I'm sorry," he said nervously, "but we have guests watching." Daniel stood up. He turned to the manager. "Do you know who she is?" Daniel asked, pointing to Lena. The manager shook his head. "She is family," Daniel said loudly. The room gasped. "This woman showed kindness when others showed disrespect," Daniel continued. "And for that, she deserves honor." The manager's face turned red. "I apologize," he said quickly. Daniel did not respond. He turned back to Lena. "There is more," Daniel said quietly. "My grandmother owns something very valuable." Lena felt fear rise again. "The people from the past," Daniel continued, "they are still looking." The old woman signed fast. Daniel's eyes widened. "She says they followed her here," he said. Lena remembered the man at the door. Her hands started shaking again. Daniel stood taller. "Then they made a mistake," he said firmly. "They came to the wrong place." He pulled out his phone and sent a message. Security guards moved again. Doors were watched. No one was allowed to leave without notice. The restaurant felt like a locked box. Daniel looked at Lena. "You're not alone anymore," he said. The old woman squeezed Lena's hand and smiled through tears. For the first time in years, Lena felt something she had forgotten. Safety. But deep inside, she knew something else. The truth was coming out. And when it did, it would change everything. The restaurant doors were locked now. Not loudly. Not with drama. Just quietly. Security stood near every exit. Daniel sat back down, but his body stayed tense. His eyes moved from Lena to his grandmother, then back again. Like he was afraid one of them might disappear. "Grandma," he said softly, "it's time." The old woman looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. She lifted her hands. Her signs were slow, heavy, full of memories. Daniel watched closely. His breathing changed. His hands clenched. "She says," Daniel began, then stopped. He swallowed hard. She says the secret started many years ago. Before I was rich. Before power. Lena leaned forward. The old woman signed again. She says she witnessed a crime. Daniel continued. A crime done by powerful people. The room felt colder. They stole money meant for poor families, he said, and blamed others. Lena's heart raced. That night, Daniel said, they found out she knew the truth. The old woman signed sharply. Daniel nodded. They threatened her, he said. They said if she spoke, a child would suffer. Daniel looked at Lena. That child was you. Lena felt like the floor dropped under her. My grandmother chose me, Lena whispered. The old woman reached out and touched Lena's face. Her eyes were full of pain. She says leaving you was the hardest thing she ever did, Daniel translated. But it was the only way to save you. Lena started crying openly now. All the years of anger. All the questions. All the silence. They finally had answers. Daniel stood up slowly. He took a folder from his jacket. I kept this hidden, he said. She trusted me with it when I was young. He placed the folder on the table. Inside were papers. Old. Official. Dangerous. These documents prove everything, Daniel said. Names. Money. Lies. The old woman signed again. Daniel looked angry now. She says those men became very rich, he said. They still hurt people. Lena wiped her tears. Why now, she asked softly. Daniel looked at her. Because you are grown, he said, and because kindness brought you back together. The manager stood far away, shaking. The staff whispered. Customers watched like they were part of history. The old woman signed something final. Daniel took a deep breath before translating. She says, Lena is her blood, he said. Not by birth, by choice. The room went silent. Daniel smiled sadly. She raised you as her own, he said. And she never stopped loving you. Lena stood up suddenly. She hugged the old woman tightly. No words. Just tears. Just truth. After a moment, Daniel spoke again. There is something else, he said. He looked serious. The people who followed her tonight, he continued. They know we are close to exposing everything. Fear returned. But they are too late, Daniel said firmly. Already sent copies to lawyers and media. The old woman smiled. A calm smile. Like she was finally free. Lena looked around the restaurant. At the rich walls. At the judging eyes. At the people who ignored kindness. Her life had changed forever. Not because she served food, but because she served humanity. Daniel placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. You will never stand alone again, he said. Outside, police lights appeared in the distance. Blue, red, flashing. Justice was coming. And this time, the truth would not be silent. The police arrived quietly. No siren screaming. No shouting. Just calm footsteps entering the restaurant. People turned in their seats. Forks stopped moving. Conversations died. 2 officers walked toward Daniel. He stood up and nodded. They're ready, he said. The officers listened carefully as Daniel spoke. He handed them copies of the documents. The old woman watched closely, her hands resting on the table. Her face showed no fear, only relief. One officer looked at Lena. You're safe, he said kindly. Those 2 words hit her harder than anything else. Safe. She had not felt that word in many years. The manager walked over slowly. His face was pale. I didn't know, he said to Lena. I'm sorry for how you were treated. Lena looked at him. She did not smile. She did not get angry. She just nodded. Respect was not something to beg for. It was something to earn. Daniel turned to the staff. Kindness should never be punished, he said calmly. And silence should never protect wrongdoing. Some waiters looked down in shame. Others looked at Lena differently now. Not as a waitress. As a woman with strength. The old woman lifted her hands and signed something gently. Daniel translated with a soft smile. She says kindness is the loudest voice. Lena's eyes filled with tears again. One officer stepped closer. We will escort you both home, he said to Daniel and his grandmother. Daniel nodded. But before leaving, he turned to Lena. There is something important, he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. My office, he said, and my home. Lena hesitated. I don't want money, she said honestly. Daniel smiled. I know, he replied. That's why I trust you. The old woman stood slowly. She opened her arms. Lena stepped into them without thinking. The hug was warm, strong, real, like coming home after being lost for years. Customers began clapping softly. One clap, then another. Soon, the whole restaurant applauded. Not for wealth, not for power, for humanity. The manager cleared his throat. "You will always have a place here," he said nervously. Lena looked at the uniform she was wearing. Then she shook her head. "I think my journey is changing," she said softly. Daniel nodded with pride. Outside, the night air felt fresh. The old woman looked up at the sky and smiled. She signed something one last time before leaving. Daniel translated quietly for Lena. She says, "You changed the ending." Lena watched them walk away with the police escort. She felt tired, but lighter. Later that night, Lena stood alone in her small room. She looked at the old bracelet in her hand. She remembered her grandmother's words. Hands can speak. Hearts can listen. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Tomorrow, we start a new chapter." Lena smiled. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing clearly. Kindness had given her justice and respect, and a family she thought was lost forever. Sometimes, the quietest kindness changes the loudest lives. Morning light filled the city slowly. For the first time in years, Lena woke up without fear. No rusing, no heavy heart, just silence and calm. She sat on the edge of her bed and looked at her hands. These were the same hands that served food, cleaned tables, and worked long hours. But now they felt different. They had brought her back to her family. Her phone buzzed again. A simple message. "Breakfast with Grandma. 9 a.m. Lena smiled. She arrived at Daniel's home shortly after. The house was large, but did not feel cold. Warm light filled the rooms. The deaf grandmother sat near the window, watching birds outside. When she saw Lena, her face lit up. She opened her arms wide. Lena hugged her without hesitation. No words were needed. They spoke with hands, with eyes, with smiles. Daniel watched them quietly from a distance. He felt something he had not felt in years. Peace. Over breakfast, the grandmother signed stories from the past. Small memories. Simple moments. Times when she secretly watched over Lena from far away. Lena listened with tears and laughter. There was no anger left, only understanding. Later that day, Daniel took Lena to his office. Not to show power, but to offer purpose. "I want you to help me build something," he said. "For people who are ignored," Lena replied. Daniel smiled. "Exactly. They planned a foundation for the deaf, the poor, and forgotten children. Not just money, respect, voice, opportunity." Weeks passed. The story spread. News channels talked about the waitress who chose kindness. People shared online. The restaurant became famous, but for the right reason. Lena did not chase fame. She chased impact. One evening, she returned to the restaurant. Not in uniform, as a guest. The staff greeted her with respect. The manager bowed his head slightly. Lena smiled kindly. The past no longer hurt. The grandmother signed something softly as they sat together. Lena understood it clearly. "You belong." Daniel raised a glass. "To kindness," he said. "To listening," Lena replied. Outside, the city lights shined. Inside, 3 hearts were finally at peace. Lena looked around the table. She was no longer invisible. She was seen, not because of wealth, but because she chose humanity. And sometimes, that is the greatest power of all.